Well, I don't think we need to go through the preliminaries and the reports, and we'll just go down to old business, and that's the ordinance on chickens, or fowl.
Foul.
Fowl ordinance. Did you all read it online?
Yes.
So can I start?
It's an actual ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't read it. I did have an opportunity to visit with Dr. Clark, who was the individual that was requested by Mrs. Owen.
To come here and
Deborah
speak?
Dean, I'm
Deborah
sorry.
Dean, yeah.
Deborah Dean. And Dr. Clark, and I identified myself. I told him I was just reaching out to him to kind of understand his perspective, and he said that his department preferred not to be interjected as an advocate of one side or another on a political issue. That was not the purpose of their department. The Extension Service, the purpose is to educate the public and not to take sides on a debate within any community. He went on to say that Mrs. Dean was the type of person that every time she started going down through her issues, as he started to answer maybe her second or third question, she's already iterating her 8th, 9th, and 10th question. So a lot of talking and not a lot of listening on her part. He stated she also said one of the things is she didn't get progress on their efforts, that she was seriously considering buying large amounts of chickens and releasing them into the community. He pointed out to her that that would get her in trouble on several levels, as she would be releasing non-native animals into the community, and she would find herself in trouble at a federal level. He also pointed out that chickens are one tool in a toolbox. That toolbox should also include treatment of your property, either with chemicals or homedics. There are avenues for both, which he pointed out to her. He was on the road, and so he talked on his cell phone. We talked for the better part of 45 minutes. He said it was very clear to him that they had an agenda and they were not going to be dissuaded. I explained to him that Mr. Ishmael isn't here tonight, that he explained the avenue that's available to them through the bills of assurance, and that they seem completely disinterested in pursuing that avenue. And again, we talked about the economics, because I mean, I've been through everything. The CDC studies, I've been through the University of Minnesota studies, Cleveland Clinic. I even went so far as to read a couple of studies that were done by Hobby Farm magazine, that they commissioned a couple of studies. The point where the economics turn the corner for raising chickens and or eggs is at 218 birds. It's not 5 or 6. And then lastly, he also agreed with me that we have members of various schools in the surrounding counties that are part of the FFA programs that are raising chickens and are more than willing to sell their eggs at very low prices, if not during the warmer seasons during the year and the longer lighting periods, if you're not supplemental lighting with chickens, that they have an abundance of eggs that some would even be inclined to give those eggs away. So the economics don't work on a community basis or an individual basis. So for one, I cannot even see entertaining this conversation further, but there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for people that oppose, the introduction of chickens into the community to stand up and really, we've only had a handful of people come forward. And it just doesn't seem like, whether it's Mrs. Dean or whether it's Mrs., am I going to pronounce it?
If I can interject here, I think we just need to go back to what we discussed. I mean, I'm sitting here reading this thing. The only way this council can even entertain this is if you bring us something from a judge where 51% of the people...
You're in the wrong. Sorry.
That's what this looks like to me. I mean...
Bills of assurance have no bearing on what any action that the city makes. Bills of assurance have nothing to do with the city, period. Bills of assurance
this is
are
saying that
bills
you
of
must
assurance.
go through these process, and after you've gotten a sign-off from a judge who approves it, then you bring that before a city council, and they vote on that.
We have a law. The city made a law, and that's what they're talking about. They're not talking about bills of assurance. They're talking about the city law. You're talking about something that has no bearing on the city whatsoever.
All right, well,
Period.
for a point of discussion, let's agree to set aside the bills of assurance.
Sounds good.
For a second, and then where do you go with that, Peter?
I promised them I would bring it in front of the council for a vote. I honestly don't think the votes are there. So it's going to put it to bed one way or the other. That's it.
Well, I have
And if
something,
it passes the first time, there's still 2 other votes. So I believe that I told them I would bring it in front of the council for a vote. They've done everything they could, and there's no reason we can't vote on it.
Is there a second to this?
well, hold on, I have a discussion though.
Yeah.
So, we have chickens in the village already.
We do.
Someone close to me, but I can't find who it is, has got a rooster. So, we have nothing to fight this on from a city hall perspective, from a code enforcement perspective.
But we do.
We do.
There is ordinance on the book that if you have non-domestic animals on your property, under that ordinance, which is on the books, we had a potbelly pig removed from the shores of Lake Thunderbird.
I wasn't finished.
Pardon me?
I wasn't finished. What I was saying was, we have nothing from a city hall standpoint to fight this on. When it falls underneath the Arkansas Disability Act. That's where I'm going with this. I talked to a couple of doctors, and they absolutely have the ability to say, yes, you need this for therapy or whatever. From my understanding, I know, but if there's people out there, psychologists and doctors that are willing to do this.
So how have the airlines pushed back on...
Well, that's why I'm bringing this up, because I have a
comfort
question
animals
about it.
within the airline industry, because the airline industry, because people were talking about everything from iguanas to snakes to you name it, that I can walk onto an airplane. And they were able to, under the ADA, push back and go, no.
And that's why I'm bringing it up. I'm not fighting for it.
No, I understand
I'm
that.
simply saying I think it's something that needs to be discussed here.
Andrew, are you
What-
planning on bringing a second to this when it comes to the table? I'm just asking so we can cut this conversation short.
On which part exactly, because I'm just listening right now.
Well, I don't want to
Okay.
just cut it short, Rob.
No, but I mean, if we don't
because-
have a second on the floor, then there'll be no vote anyway. It'll stop, it'll die.
Okay,
that's
my
why I'm
discussion
curious.
was more not only just pertaining to the ordinance, but also the calls that we get from citizens, I'd like to be
And I
armed
agree
with as
you.
much
It
knowledge
ought-
as possible.
We ought to discuss it.
That's all I'm
I agree
saying.
with you. It ought to be discussed because we do get phone calls.
Yes.
And I'm getting asked at least 10 to 1. The people that are engaging me are the people that moved here because it's an incorporated city, because it does not have farm animals within the city.
Right.
Now, you may have had people that illegally interjected chickens or other animals in the past that are considered farm animals, but they didn't do so with anybody's consent. They just did it on their own, under the old, it's easier to ask forgiveness than it is permission
Right.
type of rule. But I do believe that we have plenty of precedent of physicians that are willing to come down on the side of the city, just as they have with bus lines, airlines, shipping company, cruise lines, you name it.
My question is simply, if they get written documentation to have the chickens under the Disability Act, what does the city have? That's my only question.
'Cause there's
How
no-
do
I
we?
believe a code enforcement officer, and I can go pull up the code where we have the ability, because, and I don't remember the exact ordinance number, but first occurrence is up to $500, first occurrence. Second occurrence is up to $250 per day. Now, I read that in our code of things that are on the books, and that's what Charlie used for the property owner that was renting to the person that had the potbelly pig, 200-pounder. And, that landlord had that pig removed. It was gone in 24 hours because he pointed out the ordinance. The ordinance was then cited by the landlord to the renter, and he told the renter, you can either remove the pig or you can move. So my point is that if this person decides under the ADA, go down that path, they decide to go ahead and they're going to get a written document from a doctor that says, under the ADA, my client is going to go ahead and have chickens. My point is, find her and her husband under the ordinance that we've got on the books, get it in front of Judge Johnson, and let him decide whether or not she has coverage under the ADA. I don't believe that Judge Johnson in this municipal court will decide in favor of the residents wanting to claim coverage under the ADA. He'll look at the court precedents where ADA has applied. And again, I go back to another, because you can stack up doctors on COVID or flu shots, and some say there's benefits or there's not benefits. You can say doctors, ask doctors or attorneys, do you have coverage under the ADA for this, that, or the other? That's why you go in front of a judge and you have somebody have a decision. I would say cite her. We know her name, we know her address, we know her intent. When she introduces chickens, cite her, let her come in and stand in front of Judge Johnson and see where it goes.
Well, now, let me be clear, I'm not talking about her specifically. There are others.
Oh, I understand.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I just want to make sure I'm not speaking
I'm
to
not
her
trying
directly.
I'm not trying to pick one
Right.
individual. But I do think as a city, we have a responsibility to those citizens that moved here, purchased a property under the pretenses that they would not have the same thing that is out there in the county.
But you're making an assumption. Batesville has chickens, Jonesboro has chickens, Fayetteville has chickens and pigs. It's a privilege that we took away when we started the city. It's a privilege. It's not a right. I agree with that 100%. Just like cats and dogs are privileges, and what kind of harassment and haranguement have we been going through with that? We have ordinances that aren't blatantly being abused. No licenses on animals. You call up animal control, tell them there's a problem there. We don't have room. We can't do anything about it. So what good is it? So we got a small group of people that put limitations on themselves. And by putting them on themselves, it also says in the ordinance that nothing's grandfathered. So if anybody has 20 chickens, it's got to be reduced down to 5. So, and we don't all live on Thunderbird either. 9% of the city of Cherokee Village makes under $10,000 a year. 9% of everybody.
And your point.
So my point is, there is a bunch of Cherokee Village that aren't $100,000 houses, that are rural, that we should at least give them the opportunity to have a means of a couple eggs in the morning after the investment of the chickens.
Okay, so time out. Bear with me.
We are a
just
big
second.
community.
No,
So,
I
yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
But you're trying to sit there and say that by accepting this ordinance, that it is an economically sound decision for somebody on limited income to have chickens, and that's an economically sound decision. And I'm saying that you haven't studied the economics of it. I have.
$1.35 egg is what you're gonna end up with.
And what you're talking about, Peter, is you're going to encourage people that otherwise might be on the borderline or not even considering it, that say, "Oh, I'm challenged economically because my income is X, whatever X is, whatever number you're choosing as a breakpoint."
Well,
I'm saying that the very people that promote hobby farms, the very people that promote chickens, are saying that it's not economically a sound decision to do that, especially when we have kids out here in the county that are doing FFA projects that are more than willing to provide eggs to these people at much more economical prices than going out and buying feed, coop, fence, everything else, so that by the time you get chickens, your eggs are far more expensive. And I think by taking the path that you're taking, you're making a statement to people that aren't going to study the economics. And they're just going to do it and say, well, hey, the city, they must feel that it's an economically good decision on my part to go ahead and get 5 or 6 chickens, and it's going to be cheaper for me. And guess what? They find out the real hard part of chickens. It's a 7-day-a-week. This is Dr. Clark talking, not me.
No,
This is the state extension office talking, saying it is a 7-day commitment.
just
These
like
are
having
animals
a
that
dog
have to
or
be
a cat.
treated.
Just
And
like having a
ticks get
dog
on
or-
those chickens.
Correct, yes. You are 100% right there.
And they will transfer those ticks to their owners. Because you're going to be sitting there gathering eggs. The lid you're going to take off in this community that is on may not be on as tight as it might otherwise be, but the lid you're going to take off by endorsing something like this is something that's going to be far more difficult and challenging than trying to police what we already have. And we already have a situation where we have commingled in this community animal control and humane society.
Which has been a problem ever since it started.
We commingled it, and in Batesville, they kept it separate.
Right.
Animal control is sending an officer out and acquiring an animal and having a very limited time frame before the animal is euthanized. Humane Society is not even under the county or the city of Batesville. Now, you mentioned cities that have chickens inside. We had a citizen come in here and talk about Naperville, Illinois, specifically.
Correct.
So I pulled the ordinance, and do you know what the ordinance? Yes, it does permit chickens. But in Naperville, Illinois, they require the chickens are kept in a coop no closer than 200 feet than any building that is visited by a human, including garages and shops. The average home in Naperville, Illinois sits on a 1/4 acre lot. Pull out your tape measure. That means that for over 95% of the homeowners and occupants in Naperville, Illinois, they can't put a chicken on their property because of proximity to their neighbors' buildings. So yeah, they have an ordinance for chickens, but for the overwhelming majority of citizens, and so if that ordinance ends up being proposed in this city council, I will at a minimum be looking at a substantial distance that those coops have to be from other neighbors' property. Because that's something that's not in that ordinance.
Yeah,
They
there's a
don't talk about
distance, yes, there's a
distances.
distance, read the ordinance, there's a distance.
So that ordinance that's being put forward, it didn't go through the city's attorney.
Yes, it did go through the city's attorney.
You took a prefab ordinance.
The only
and
difference
put it
between
in front of
what the attorney saw on this one is I removed the part about free range, because I wasn't going to vote for anything that they were going to let our chickens free range.
But did what city that you mentioned did you draw upon to draft that? Because we've relied on a lot of other Class A cities, not
And
Class.
there's another thing, we don't have to be a Class A city either. And That's...
We are by definition.
No, we are
over
not.
2,500 people. Look at the definition.
Go back and read. Go back and read it. It's not 2,500, it's up to 10,000. You can be a Class A city, yes, but it might not be in your best interest to be a Class A city.
We've claimed Class A status since incorporation of the
Correct.
city in 1998.
Correct.
So we've been a Class A city for 24 years. Do you want
Correct.
to change that?
Well, we're losing out on a lot of money because of our status.
How do you say that?
Well, we got all the second-class cities around us. I know economics, we have too many people in here that make too much money, and therefore we're not getting the subsidies like Hardy is and Highland is. Even little old Willowford got a big old grant to pave 1.5 miles of road, and they only have 6 people in the whole, 9 people in the whole
Let me
city.
interrupt you, Peter. They got the same grant that Cherokee Village got.
With 6 folks.
Well, it doesn't make any difference. The way that grant is set up through RDOT and the municipal league, all those cities are eligible. It's just a matter of geographic location as time goes on. We were fortunate we got it twice.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have anything to do with the size of the city.
City. Okay. I will not argue that point.
I'd like to make a couple comments.
Go ahead.
First of all, I really think, no matter what happens, we need to put this to bed. This meeting, get it done and over with. For 2 months, I've had stuff that's more important than this to put on the agenda that has to do with money that this city's out, that I can't get on the agenda because every month is chickens.
Why can't you put it on the agenda?
We don't have room for it. We want to be here till 9 o'clock.
If it needs to go on the agenda, it should go on the agenda.
No, we shouldn't keep you here till 9 o'clock.
Then it must not be too important if you can't put it on the agenda.
What makes the chicken thing so
Maybe $30,000 or
important?
$100,000
Why
that the
does it
city's
have
out
to
is not
dominate
important.
our...
I don't know about it, so how can we
Here's
know
my
if it's
point.
important or not?
And you'll never get my vote on this, and I'm going to say it right now.
That's fine.
We gutted the police department. We gutted the zoning and planning. Let me finish, please. I don't hardly speak, and I'd like to be heard here.
Go ahead.
We gutted both of them due to the lawsuit.
Correct.
You pass this, plain and simple, you're going to have people with bills of assurance that's going to be complaining about their neighbors having chickens. We have one cop that works at night with no backup. Is he going to go and take his time out of his shift to go out there and address chickens? Are you going to take that money from the chickens and hire another cop? How's that going to work?
Well,
Or are you going to call zoning and planning? It's already short another guy.
those are some good points. And it didn't come out of my pocket. And what basically happened was, there was a lawsuit that was had, and it's like losing a business. We lost our manufacturing in the city, and that's where the $800,000 went. So, what are we going to do? Are we going to, and these are what we should be talking about at meetings, exactly this kind of stuff.
But why open a can of worms when we don't have somebody to control that can of worms? We don't have the cops.
I will say this, though, to Peter's defense. He did what a good councilman does.
Absolutely.
When a group of citizens come
understand
to
that.
you
I will agree
and
with that
they
100%.
want something brought before council, whether we like it,
Yeah.
agree, disagree, he hasn't even given his full opinion about whether he likes it or not. He did what a good councilman does. So I'm going to take Peter's side on that, because I've done that before. Steve, you've done that before. Rob, you've done that before. Chuck, you have too. So yelling at Peter for bringing this to us, in my opinion, but I get what you're saying as
No,
well.
I'm not really yelling at Peter. I'm
No,
just
I
angry.
Yeah.
The chicken
Every
thing
time-
needs to be put to bed.
Yeah.
I raised my question.
I told the mayor,
That got
what did I say
answered.
last time we talked? It should be put to bed. And I was assuming that this would be the easiest way to put it to bed. That way, there's going to be nobody go, oh, they did this behind their backs, they did this.
Exactly.
If we have a vote, I think I know what the vote is. So, and I told them that it will not pass. I have said this to them. So, the thing is, if it comes up, we have a second, we vote on it, there's enough people here, and I pretty much know what everybody's opinion is. I can't count 5 people to pass it. No way.
Let me correct you on one thing, Peter. We've been doing this, but it's not necessary to vote at the first reading. The only time you need to vote is when you're getting ready to approve or adopt an ordinance.
Okay, but if we vote and it fails the reading, it's put to bed. And that's,
If you bring it to council and it doesn't get a second to even be read, it's put to
I
bed.
don't think we
Yeah,
should put
but-
it, I think we should table it, because if somebody comes to us with a changed bill of assurance,
well, see,
that subdivision.
You're talking about something that doesn't mean anything to the city. Show me where the bill of assurance means something to a municipality, period. There's nothing, that is a contract between the person that sold you, or actually the developer created that, said everybody in this development is going to be like this. But since nobody's been enforcing the bill of assurances, since we became a city, then it really is not going to have any merit. Because fences were put in.
Part of the incorporation of the city was to include the bills of assurance by reference. Go back and look at the incorporation
Because they
of the city.
didn't know what they were doing.
It doesn't matter what they didn't know what they were doing.
You are pulling something in that's creating more of a problem for the city. And here's
It
another
doesn't until you have somebody willing to bring up an ordinance that goes directly against the bills of assurance.
Fences are against the bills of, certain bills of assurance, and we have fences being put up every place. Parking a RV in your yard is against the bills of assurance in certain areas, but people do it all over the place.
Well, it doesn't mean that it can't be enforced.
But
Just because it's not enforced doesn't mean it
No,
can't be enforced.
it's something that the city doesn't need to be diving into and playing with. I think the city should relook at what it's doing and should reallocate funds depending on what departments really need the funds. I've got people yelling at me, literally, because the roads haven't been done to anybody's satisfaction in the last 20 years.
But Peter, we can go down any rabbit trail you want to pick to go spend. We're trying to sit here, as Mr. Tatum has pointed out, Jeff, excuse me.
No, that's fine.
Either way, and Pam, we have allocated such a disproportionate amount of time and energy within countless meetings. We had a woman come before the city council wanting us to tell the city of Ash Flat to put a stoplight in front of Walmart.
I remember that.
And finally, I spoke up. I was called down because I was possibly rude to the person, but she was arguing an issue to which we had no dog in the hunt. Here, again, we have a period of discussion on an issue that we've given an incredible amount of time and patience to allow them to speak continually about their individual rights and completely disregard the rights of all the other citizens that really don't want this.
Well, I apologize for not having it done earlier, but I had things happen in my life that were extreme that I just couldn't deal with the city and that at the same time. So it is all my fault again, and I apologize, because it could have been done, 2 months ago.
Well, I think we're at the point
But the
now.
thing is now, it's happened, so we're either gonna, shit or get off the pot. I say vote, let it be done, do it out in public so nobody can complain. If we put it to bed here, there's gonna be somebody that's starting stuff up in the background. If we put it to bed at council in a legitimate, it doesn't have to take up much time.
I don't mind that you bring it up to council, but if you bring it up to council, I'm asking procedurally.
Yeah.
So if you make a motion to have this ordinance voted on, and the motion isn't seconded,
Then it
It's dead.
fails.
Yeah, then it fails, it's dead.
Right, it fails.
Point of order,
do you object to that?
What?
a point of order. You are doing all this discussion and you haven't even been called into session, period.
No, he started it earlier. Yeah, he started it right at 6:30, yeah.
Well, what I was saying about the bill of assurance,
Yeah.
what you believe about the bill of assurance or not, well, let's say your subdivision just passed it, so we'd love to go into court and say, yep, we want chickens, I wouldn't have no problem signing off on it. I wouldn't have no problem voting for it.
But the cities, the thing, bill of assurance, again, wasn't the thing they were coming after. They were coming after the ordinance that the city created that excluded it. So that's the topic, not bill of assurance. The topic is the ordinance that the city had created.
What I'm
And
saying-
keeping that in mind, Peter, but I'm with Pam. Thank you for doing this, because no one else was going to, and these are voices that needed to be heard. But I was elected by the people in my ward to represent them. Since this has started, I've had a total of 17 phone calls and emails. Within those 17, I've got 13 people who are adamant they do not want chickens. I've got 4 people that they've emailed, I mean, they have harassed me, but they've gotten my attention. The fact of the matter is, there's still only 4 people. I mean, they've made the loudest noise.
Right.
But the majority of my constituents who have contacted me by a large amount don't want chickens.
Then
So I
that's how
have
you
to
should
vote
vote. Yeah.
for those people.
And-
And that's where I'm at.
And that's what I'm
And I
telling
think all of
everybody
us
to do.
can probably say just about the same thing. The calls we've got are not overwhelming for chickens.
Right.
So-
I agree with that
So
100%.
I'm just asking clarity of procedurally, when we get in council meeting and you're introducing this ordinance now, it's in.
I'd make a
version-
motion and there's no
You make a
second,
motion.
then it
and
dies there.
And there is no second,
then it dies there, correct.
okay? If for some reason somebody on council decides to second your motion, where do we go from there?
Then you have a vote.
No, we have to
and-
discuss it.
Well, if you want to discuss it, you can discuss it, but you would have a vote, and then you have to have five to pass it.
Before it goes to a second read.
Yeah, and if it doesn't pass first
Okay.
reading,
That's all I was asking.
Oh,
I just was
I'm sorry.
looking at the procedure.
Yeah, procedure.
We've all got
if there's no,
personal opinions
yeah, if
about
there's
it.
no second, and I'm saying if we do it at a legislative session, it's out there for everybody to see.
Agreed.
Rather than.
And I'm not objecting
then
to
take
that.
it,
I
'cause-
wasn't trying
yeah,
to
okay.
settle it tonight.
Okay, yeah.
I was just trying to ask, when we go
You're
to
right,
council.
correct.
And we've got a process.
You are 100%
That we're
right.
supposed to follow, that's all I was asking.
It doesn't, we've already had the motion to have this ordinance and second, so it doesn't need that procedurally at the meeting on Thursday night.
So what does it mean at this point?
All you're doing is reading the ordinance.
But the ordinance has
But-
changed dramatically from the
but-
original ordinance that was presented.
The thing is, I don't know where you're getting those rules from, because the rules we adopted,
That's Robert Rules of Order.
well, but we didn't adopt Robert's Rules of Order.
But
We
that's
had,
the resolution, what we're running our meetings by.
no, we adopted the rules that Municipal League had put out.
No, you read the resolution, Peter. It says Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay, so regardless of that, but my question that I'd like to have answered is, we had an ordinance that you brought,
Right,
a motion was made, you made a motion, it
Right.
was seconded, and we moved forward with that ordinance. But the ordinance that you're bringing
It's been amended.
has been amended.
Correct.
That
It's-
will require a motion and a second.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm keyed on.
so, okay, so for Thursday, I will be making a motion. If there's a second, there's a second. If I don't get a second, it fails there.
Okay.
And then, like I said, I know what the votes are. But,
procedure's still procedure,
Yeah,
and it needs to be
and-
done in
and
public.
you've done the right thing.
When you
Only
do
two
call
people.
for it Thursday night, if you will say the amended
Amended, okay.
version, so that way everybody's clear. And then,
Works.
yeah.
And then
Makes
I have-
sense,
At least
yeah.
I have clarity of where we're going on it. I
Yep.
mean, I'm just trying to understand that procedure.
Everybody I've talked to is adamant against it.
well, when
And
I
I've
was,
had like 2 say, I don't care. The rest of them have just been, I had a guy in the back of the ambulance who just had a heart attack on the way to Batesville, the one to talk chicken ordinance with me. And I'm like, dude,
you just had a
let's
heart
talk
attack.
about something else.
Yeah,
I'm serious. And he was adamant against it.
yeah.
So,
On his deathbed almost.
yeah, he just had a heart attack. and
Don't
just
you
got out
let
of
them,
the
them chicken, oh, I can't do
I could
this.
sit there and watch.
But I mean, it's been going back and forth too long. I'm really
I agree.
to the point where,
Because to Jeff's point, we have got a multitude of issues everyone sitting around these tables.
Yeah,
And I'm sorry, but this one really needs to be off our list.
amen.
So we
I think
can
they
move
should do it.
forward.
I'm not, and I wasn't
No, no,
mad at you, yelling at you,
no, 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 no.
I'm so tired of hearing
Oh, it's
it.
not gonna change public.
You know, and
opinion at all, but
it's,
it's-
we get
Yeah.
people up here insulting us,
Discuss it.
we get people
That's-
insulting each
So let
other,
it die on.
That's-
looking at each other, insulting each other. That's not what this is about.
Well,
There's a
Right,
lot of divisiveness right now.
right. And you have to have the thicker skin than everybody else does. That's just,
Either this,
I ain't got a problem.
and then
My wife's sitting back there and she's
you're the
fortunate.
man to second it.
everyone.
But she's looked at the pros and cons and
What are we
she's
seconding?
decided
What am I
against
seconding?
it.
I think we've killed the chicken.
chicken,
We
let's go
have.
on to something else.
Yeah.
Let's
We run the neck.
let's move on to rezoning number 2.
Got to bring it up for discussion.
Mayor,
That's,
We're not done. I'm sorry, Russ.
What?
I was telling him, I don't think that letting this die on the vine is a good idea. I just don't. Everyone should be able to have their say. Now, there's people that are against it, and there are people that are for it, that are gonna wanna discuss this once we are considering.
they're not going to be denied that, Chuck, at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, they
Yes, and there's,
They get a chance to speak against, or speak for.
For or against it,
is
yeah.
on the agenda.
and I've got someone that's gonna speak opposed to it. She's gonna come in, sign up, and because she wants the one that has, the last one?
Yeah.
Available, she wants it amended. She's against the chickens, but if we were to get it, she's against the way it's written in the ordinance. So she's gonna speak on that. But I think to just let it die and
Instead of in Thursday night's public meeting, letting them see the
Yeah.
discussion basically that happened
I
here
mean,
tonight, because then
yeah.
it's going to be another, well, they did it behind closed doors. But
Right, and
I
that's-
think we're also
I
to
don't
the,
wanna-
I agree with you, okay? I'm all for doing things as much in front of everyone, but you've got this recorded, correct?
Yes.
So it will be out there, and therefore it's up to the citizen to find that recording and get the information. We're just to a point, Chuck, in this community to where it doesn't matter what we do anymore.
No.
It doesn't matter. If we do it at Monday night's meeting, that's open to the public. If we put it on recording, if we do it on Thursday night, someone's going to have something to say. Procedurally, which is backed up, by documentation, that's the way you follow procedure. Now, if you want to second it Thursday night, then it opens the floor for discussion. If you want to request each council member to say what their reasoning is or how they feel about it, you can do that, and we can choose to respond or not.
So let me ask this.
It's a procedural matter.
If we do end up, the motion is made, it's seconded, and then it goes into multiple readings, okay? Can we then possibly consider that this goes and gets segregated into a committee-style hearing? We appoint people to study the issue, discuss the issue with the public, and we get it out of the normal council meeting that is really supposed to be addressing the business issues of the community in their entirety, and I'm not trying to shove it to the side, but I'm trying to provide an opportunity that these people, if they want to be heard, pro and con,
Right.
we do it in a committee hearing rather than a council hearing, because council really is about taking up things that have been studied and are ready for presentation and make a decision. Council
I don't
generally
think that's
is
a
not
bad
this
idea.
open debate.
I think we're wasting our time
You
on
can't-
that. I'm sorry.
However,
You can't
though,
refer to
it would
the
just
city.
come back to us
You
again.
cannot refer to a committee once
Yeah.
it's already been established.
In front of city
in the
council.
ordinance.
And besides, it's just,
Committee business
And
has
then-
been taken care of prior to it being
Before
brought.
we-
And you can't do anything for 190 days afterwards, right?
yeah. I would be fine with you bringing this to the council. I would be fine with you making a second, open it for discussion. You could ask me, I'll tell you exactly what I said tonight. The constituents who have contacted me, the majority of those people do not want chickens. That's where my vote has to lie. And we can all go around and say whatever it is. and at that point, it's up for a vote. We all know it's not going to have a second reading, because we're not going to vote for this. It's just not going to happen.
I think that's a
The
really
votes
good
are not
idea.
in this room.
Well, now,
Let
if
everybody-
it's seconded and it's put on the floor, there will be, it doesn't matter, pass or fail, you have to read 3 times.
Be done with it.
Well, the
People-
motion can be
everybody's
made
on it,
to
why they stand.
adopt it, all 3 readings at once.
Yes, you can do that.
You have an
We can do that and then
emergency
just
clause in that?
close the door on it.
Well, I don't need to pass it. I don't need to create an emergency clause. I could just get all the votes
Oh,
done.
you just wanted this to go for
Do you see what I'm saying?
That is
Don't-
correct.
Oh, you had to go.
Yes.
Suspend the rules
You've got to-
and read all 3 readings at once.
Yep.
Because like I said,
We've let it go on,
I'm-
we've let it go on too long.
I know what the votes
Well,
are.
but that was circumstantial. It wasn't like it could be helped. So, and I think it's just going to depend on if there's anybody Thursday night who wants to second it.
Yeah.
If it's seconded, then we do all 3 readings, and either yay or nay, and it's done.
But
Either
I-
way, Thursday night, it's done.
I can make the motion to put all 3 readings at once, so then all it's going to take is 1 vote.
But I really think it's a good idea to have everybody explain why, or if they're for it or why they're against it.
Yeah.
So people
Even though
know
it's
where
not
we're at.
necessary to do so.
It's-
I know,
yeah.
but I
That's
think
up to
that would be a
individual
good
council.
idea to kind of put it.
You got 2 people up for re-election right now.
You want me to summarize that?
Yeah, 3 minutes.
3 minutes, yeah. You only get 3 minutes.
Yeah, but if we could, people understand then why we're against it.
I'll tell you what
Why
I'll
we're not
do.
consent, yeah.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll have the camera there. If anybody wants to say their piece in front of the camera, I'll air it after the meeting's done about the chicken issue, if you want that done. I have no problem with that.
Oh, gosh, I think that's a worse idea than us just saying.
I mean,
Give everybody 2 minutes on the stand. It don't take
I
2
think
minutes
it's
to
fine.
tell
The
why.
council meeting is there if people want to peruse it.
right.
You know, to hold it up, you know, individually, you know, elevates it to a point.
Mr. Mayor, I think we're ready to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Russ?
You're ready to go on to the next one.
I attended the rezoning of the commercial property, and I'm sure everyone's already heard, but it was unanimous with planning and zoning. They pushed it through. He has reconfigured the entryway, so it will not be coming in off of the other street. It's going to come off the street that is more traveled. He is also going to give a larger barrier around the campsites themselves. So instead of being 25 feet in, they're going to be 50 feet into the inside of the woods.
Yeah.
And he's created a park-like setting that's going to, like paths that will travel all the way around it. The guy knows his stuff.
So it's
I mean,
different from the map that we were given?
it's only different by the fact that he's pushed it away from the residential area and closer to like where the bar's at. And he has moved it to that side street hospital, so it's not coming in off a busy residential street. I mean, he's pretty much thought, I mean, and he's doing this because he wants this to be as aesthetically pleasing to the campers as it can possibly be. And also, he's very cognizant of his neighbors. He's done a really good job of that.
No, the plans all look good.
Each
Yeah.
council member will have his packet on your computer, so that you'll have all that information in front of you.
Will he be here for questions? Or?
He is supposed to be, if not, I know, Charlie said he would be here to answer questions, but
Are they going to put, I don't know, they're going to put fire hydrants and stuff in there? Because them being that close together, if one catches,
But he's not doing any burning. That's what I read.
no, I'm saying if a camper catches on fire.
Oh.
Yeah, I believe if you look at that location, you've got a fire hydrant right next to where the old hospital was. You've got another one right down the street in front of the bar there. And then as you come around that corner, we're required to have one every 40 feet on that street. I haven't looked to see where they're at, but you're pretty much surrounded by fire hydrants in that area. We'd have to pull probably 100 feet. We're used to that.
Yeah. Another
a
thing
really
is,
good
is there going to
question,
be
though.
enough room for EMS and fire department to get in there if they have to extract somebody?
When you look at the plans, I think he's pretty much thought of everything. I mean, he's got plenty of turnarounds in his space. He's got his campers 20 feet, and don't quote me on this, but I mean, I was like really amazed, 20 feet apart.
Oh, that's plenty.
Yeah, so I mean, giving them that much space pretty much tells you what
Back
he's
an
done
ambulance
to the
right
whole.
next to it there.
Yeah,
More than some houses.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem is gonna be the maneuvering the RVs in the parking lot and out of the sight of where they're parked, and they don't hit their neighbor
Well,
coming
but-
and going.
One of the advantages of Cherokee that got him here in the first place was the stoplight. So, what a lot of people outside of the RV community don't understand is that when you're sitting there with like a 40-foot diesel pusher and you're pulling a 20-foot Jeep or whatever behind it, the ability to have a stoplight holding traffic for you to make a turn to come into a community is huge. And so, that's a real advantage, that we have in
That's
terms of
the new
location.
update we've got.
The other thing, and we've talked about this before, but the proximity, as Rob said, to the Elks Club, the probability is pretty high that you're going to have increased sales from within
Absolutely.
the Elks Club, and that, of course, is in addition to that's immediate impact to the
Anybody want to look at
community
that? That's the
beyond
updated.
just the
That's the
RV
update.
rental AMP tax. So, thank you for attending the meeting, and I'm glad Mr. Gilly is moving forward with that.
I'm excited about the project. I really think
Okay,
it's
let's
good.
move on to new business. The
Okay.
first item there is the superintendent of Highland School District is going to speak on the service millage for the new high school. I met with him probably 2 months ago, he and the assistant superintendent, and they briefly outlined what the intent was. My initial reaction was, I think you'll have a difficult time passing this millage in the city of Cherokee Village. Having been in the school business, we discussed some other items about schools in general. I know one reason they're pushing this right now is because of the money that they would receive from the Department of Education. They would get about $6 million. If they had to move it down the line, that money would be available instead of a $24 million bond issue. They're talking about a $30 or $32 million bond issue to build the high school. My only pet peeve I had with him, I said, I've been coming to this area since 1972. You had that high school out there. I said, one thing you promote football and baseball and basketball, and you've done nothing for kids who might be interested in track and field. You have no track. I said, those kids are at a disadvantage. And we got into some other stuff. I could go on forever, but I'll just stop there.
I mean, what specifically will he be asking from us? I mean, I think the ones of us who
He's
are...
wanting to do, he just did his presentation at Kiwanis tonight,
Okay,
just before
so he
I
just
came.
wants to...
It's a relatively short professional. They've got a couple of graphics.
They've got my vote. I mean,
that they
hopefully we'll
want
have an
to-
audience here and he can collect some. Hopefully we'll have an audience here and he can collect some more votes.
And I think that's what his intent is.
Good
And
deal.
of course, he realizes that Peter records the meeting. As Russ said, the 6.3 million is going to enable them to only do a 24 million bond issuance because they're looking at about a little over 100,000 square feet at all in $300 a foot, but that includes demolition of about 2/3 of the existing high school. They're going to retain some buildings, about 30,000 square feet. They've got about 95,000 square feet currently.
Yeah.
They're going to keep about 30,000 square feet that wasn't eligible for demolition as determined by the state, repurpose those buildings. But they're looking at basically $30 million project. If you have, and I'm sorry, I didn't bring the brochure in, but they'll bring that brochure so that if you have a $200,000 appraised home and it shows 100 and it shows smaller, then it shows you what the current millage and what the proposed millage would do to your annual property taxes.
I think the biggest conversation that anyone in this room has had with any of our constituencies, there is nothing here for kids to do. And I think this is an opportunity for them to pull some extra stuff in. And
Well, and to Russ's point, the issue of the track was raised tonight at Kiwanis, and there are no plans, for a track because they would have to reposition the football field. Intentional or not, some people feel it was intentional, but when they placed the bathroom facility at one end, that eliminated the ability to have a track make a turn, a proper turn on that end of the field. And then they put in the visiting, they blamed it on the baseball field previously, but the positioning of the guest stands and the fact that they're concrete foundation, that eliminated the track on that side of the football field. So, there has been a real lack of interest in providing track facilities, which would also be available for a flat walking track for the community. So I agree with Russ. I think they've got a very steep uphill battle. We saw what happened in the community with the 1% sales tax, which were more than justified for police and fire.
yeah.
I think for a $200,000 house, it takes your property tax from $1,200 to another, I think, $356. But they'll have a brochure to hand out to everybody here present, and
Okay.
you can carry that, and that's a pretty good brochure. But he's got an uphill battle. I don't envy him the position.
No, I don't ask
What are they going
anybody's trying to get more.
Say the thing passes, what do they plan to do with the student, if they're going to demolish part of the building? Where are those students going to attend school? If they're going to cut down on the space that's available?
No, they're going to build the new high school first, which best case they would have it available in the fall of 2025, 3 years out. And they would continue the high school as it is. Until then, they would then move everybody over to the new facility, and then the demo is at the end.
Well, he didn't share with me the site location, so.
The site location is, if you look at the A.L. Hudson, the high school will be between the 4-lane and the road that goes behind the high school and all the way back, to in front of the grade school. Okay, so that's the southern and the northern border. The border closest is going to be the parking lot of the A.L. Hudson. So the front of the high school will actually face the A.L. Hudson, the main entrance. So you have all that parking lot in between the front entrance of the A.L. Hudson, and then the high school would be spread pretty much from the 4-lane all the way to that back street.
And the municipalities have no input on what they do and how they do it as far as planning is concerned. Because when they put in the A.L. Hudson, remember what happened to the city then? We got flooded on that side of town for the first time in a long time because they took and filled in the lake that was over there, and then they didn't have any place for the water to go off that parking lot. Because I remember Verna May, her house, and then state came through and put it in big culvert all across there because that was flooding real bad. So how is their construction going to affect us? See,
They don't have any engineering plans developed as of yet. They're not.
No, they haven't even been in front of the architect.
I agree with you.
Therein is the
That's the thought that
problem.
crossed my mind, is how it's going to work. And then, having been through that in my own school district, we doubled the amount of money they're asking about here. You get delays in construction because of material, but you don't have to worry about union like you do in St. Louis. But
There's a lot of unanswered questions. The A.L. Hudson, when it was first presented to the voters, was presented at $2.8 million.
Right.
Ended up being close to $8 million.
But neither of the municipalities had any say of their planning and zoning districts about that building. They couldn't tell them that they had to have water retention on the property. They couldn't tell them how the drainage was supposed to be. Not just not just the building, about how they changed and altered the land. And if they're doing the same thing with another building like that, how is it gonna affect?
That's a point well taken. I mean,
You know.
I hear what you're saying.
So I'd rather know about that before I go say, yeah, give you some money and then,
It needs to be located on a level grade, not
well,
you're describing where they've got to go
Yeah.
and do some earth moving.
They're not gonna have substantial earth moving. They're gonna have steps down from the front to the parking lot, but the area that they're talking about doesn't have a great deal of
Once you put
grading.
more concrete up, water runs off, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Agreed. I mean, I hear, and to Peter's point.
Anyway, we'll hear what Mr. Lewis has to say.
Okay.
Item number 2, this
No.
is necessitated by the financial institution,
which financial institution?
FNBC, which where we have our account. When I first came into office, any changes like that were accomplished by just me sending a letter to the bank authorizing that person to be put on as a signatory. Well, according to this information I have, the federal government is clamping down on the banks, and so they're making these rules, and if we want to do business, we got to go with their rules.
Pass a resolution.
It's, all it amounts to is it just shows up in the minutes that City Council of Cherokee Village has authorized the treasurer to be doing this business with the bank, because he's currently not on there.
The banks are just catching up with at least from the securities industry. We've been there for.
They want to make sure somebody's not doing something dishonest.
Well, it requires, if you had an account with my firm, you would have had to have had a board decision, or in this case, city council decision. There has to be, either a resolution, authorizing, the individuals, and that has to be, on record. So FNBC is just catching up with, the rules that have been there. And yes, the federal government is clamping down on the banks and holding them to the same standards. So it's going to be required in order for Deanna to be able to sign checks.
Okay, the next item of new business would
Just a
be,
second, Mayor. It is required that when this motion is made, that it doesn't just say treasurer, it has to say treasurer Deanna Tucker. I talked to the bank, and without her name, it doesn't.
Yeah, you have to specify by name and position.
so every time that you could change the treasurer position,
Any
you have to
position.
do it, redo it. Okay, item number 3, Mr. Tatum here, we discussed this, but it's to,
Yeah, we discussed this, not the last working meeting, the one before.
that was at the last one, I thought.
Was it at the last one? Yeah, it was at the last one.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. What I'm going to be making a motion is for them to prepare the paperwork to give all full-time and part-time city employees a $2,500 bonus out of the ARPA funds. We're going into holiday season, everything's tough on everybody, and at COVID, they deserve it. From all the COVID stuff that they've dealt with, I think they really deserve it. The question is, do we want to do full-time, or do we want to do full and part-time? If you're all willing to pass this. And they had some other questions. They had one that went part-time on 9/30 and took a full job in another town. Will they be eligible for it? If we do this, I really think we need to put a date on it.
For
So,
disbursement, or,
You have a date that they had to be hired in before.
oh, okay. And
So-
should we run this at a sliding scale? Like if we've got a part-time person, maybe they don't get 2,500, but they get, like maybe
That
half of.
person went from a full-time position to a part-time position on the 30th.
Okay. So,
I'm okay with the sliding scale. That was just,
Well, but the bonuses are also paid on the basis that you were employed full-time from this date to this date. So just because somebody recently went part-time, disregards the fact that they were full-time prior to that. So, I mean, Jeff said talking about putting some dates on it. I mean, does it make sense to kind of give a time frame for which you're bonusing these employees? I mean, yes, it's a thank you for what you've done, but also some encouragement to stay the course.
But if we have somebody, we pass this and they hire in a week before we issue checks, are they eligible for those checks?
Well,
No.
that's why I think you need to establish dates.
Yeah,
you know,
put a date on it.
timeframes to which the bonus applies. I mean,
I think there's the sample resolution I have on my desk from the Municipal League. I think it says that people who are currently employed when you adopt the resolution. The issue I have with it is, in discussing with department heads, part-time, the police department is the one that has the most part-time employees. But we only have one part-time employee who's really, in the chief's mind and my mind, would be justified to receive that bonus. The rest of them haven't pulled enough weight to even do it.
So we leave it up to the department heads who gets it?
well, oftentimes, entities will sit there and say that bonuses are available to these employees, but they leave it up to the discretion of the department head to allocate that out.
So we're taking ARPA money and just giving it to the employees. We're not giving it to them for bonus pay.
It's bonus pay.
It's bonus
Okay,
pay.
okay. If it's bonus pay, most of the bonus pay is based on some sort of hours that they worked.
We just don't, that's kind of where we're just gonna need the proper wording and everything for
Right,
it.
that's what we're trying
So
to
that they can
refine.
prepare the paperwork for, unless we come up with, what, 72,000?
Well, Steve, I mean, how do you guys handle something like this? A great question, what we would do when we gave out bonuses, it was $1, I'm using a number, I think for us it was like 35 cents, but our bonus was 35 cents for every hour worked by the employee in that time period. So, if you were a full-time employee, or if you were an employee who had been working like 80 hours a week or something, you got more of a bonus than the part-time person anyway, but you also got more of a bonus than the guy who just hired in April, because he didn't have as many hours accumulated in order to receive that bonus.
Peter, that's different. That's what we did back.
No, that is Ash Flat and how they did it.
That's premium pay. That was what we did last year.
Okay.
This is something different. So
But that's not the same thing we're doing then.
no, that order of resolution is worded totally different than this.
They've relaxed the standards on how we can give it out now.
Okay.
So we don't have to be as rigid.
So you want dates,
'Cause
like
essentially,
January 1 to whenever?
this one specifies bonus pay. That was paying premium pay.
Pay,
That was
right.
for the.
Time worked already.
January 1st of 2022
Okay.
to,
This doesn't spell out because of COVID.
COVID, this is just,
when did you first kind of come up with this, Jeff? Was it
The mayor actually
September?
come up with it, but it was
Okay.
last month. I just decided to
That's the first
carry
time we
it.
actually talked about it.
And I
Then,
think one of the things that has gone into this, correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, is that as far as consideration is the realization as we're going through the budget process, that we are behind the curve with our neighboring cities. And we're definitely there with the police, in terms of they can literally walk across the highway at a higher hourly
And make
rate.
$1.55 more an
And
hour.
go to McDonald's, some of them, and make more money starting out.
So,
And they
So do
gotta
you
worry
wanna
about
date
getting
it?
shot and
right, do you want to date it January 1st, 2022 through
September.
September 1st?
That's fine. Sound good to you?
No, I don't think you really have to spell out, but if you want to. We want to make sure that, look at that resolution, so, because I don't think, it doesn't specify that date. I don't want to get us into any kind of financial problem, audit, particularly through the federal level.
Where is that, where would that number put us in our funds with ARPA that we have available?
We still have one there available.
Because we just poll, like make some approvals last month on some ARPA funds being spent. So, checking on that.
I think you did look at it.
Yeah.
There's plenty
Yeah.
left. Do we want to stipulate, so if part-time and full-time, it's just up to the department heads, or?
I think it should be equal across the board. Don't distinguish between,
Yeah, we don't need another we don't need any more rift in the,
yeah,
Yeah.
The police department's the only department that has part-time.
It should differentiate, I mean, it should be a difference, part-time, full-time.
Can you make it a
Full-time,
percentage
I think
instead of
they're-
a,
They're getting the same.
Yeah,
We-
that also.
And the part-timers should be able to understand why they get less, so that they I mean, that's just how I would see it.
Guys, I'll be honest with you, I know some of the personalities in the fire department, and there are two of them that will be really, really mad if the new kid makes as much in a bonus as the two of them do.
so
That's just their personality.
Okay,
I
well,
mean,
question
come up, I
though,
need a
is the
number.
new kid full-time or part-time?
He is full-time, but he hasn't been here that long.
Well, then you could.
Well, then now you're-
You could do your, it's just hypothetical numbers here, 2,500 full-time, half of that for your part-time, and then do the sliding thing on the timeframes. You know, figure out how much you're gonna give somebody based off.
If somebody's working 40 hours a week for 52 weeks, they're working 2,080 hours. If you multiplied that out by $1, you're not exceeding your 2,500 per person. But if you've got someone who's hired in June, and he's only worked 675 hours, multiply that out by $1, his bonus would be $675. That should satisfy your two older people who've been here longer. You've also got a sergeant in the police department who is just literally working like
Self to
60
death,
and
yeah.
75 hours every week.
Okay, but, is this a good work, good behavior, thanks for being with us so long bonus? Is this a welcome to the club, the city, we hope you stay with us long-term bonus? You have to be careful about that because we want to reward the people who made the choice to come to Cherokee Village and sign on and be here long-term, just as much as we want to appreciate the people who stayed with us this long. You need to be careful about that,
And you
so,
also have to make sure that you have
and this is a special
program
fund.
so that if you happen to get FOIA'd, like in the past, you can prove exactly where the money went and why.
because feds are gonna want that either way.
Well, but also
yeah.
everybody has to understand this is a bonus. This is something extra that, we normally could not do. It comes from, special funds to do it. So this isn't we're calling you in because you've been here the longest and we want to, this is overall something special we can do with these funds for the city. And
Sounds like something based on it presented that we're just thankful that they've served with us, and because of that, we're basing it off of their time frame for serving for us.
You don't need to, according to this sample resolution, you don't need to say that. It just says bonus pay. It's pretty much,
Tell the department head what we
it doesn't say that they've been here for X number of years, whatever. It's just the decision has to be made if you're going to pay full-time and part-time, or you're only going to pay full-time. Because that's,
Those are only two
that
options.
clause can
So-
be eliminated from the resolution.
But back to Peter's point on funds, I mean, the source of funds, this is a federal,
Right.
okay? So to fully comply with that federal source, are we playing with making adjustments? Or are we just doing a flat payment based on the fact
This, the way that's
The federal
spelled out,
government
it's a
gave
flat payment. There's no grade scale.
well, then,
You can-
flat payment's
I
the way
think
the
then
easiest
you
way to
have
go.
to comply with
You can,
that.
you can have a difference between full-time and part-time.
and that I don't have a problem with.
Right, yeah. Because it was sourced from a federal grant, I think you have to then comply with that. Your distinction is just part-time and full-time.
Yep.
It's not how much time they put in during the year. And, if there's a couple of people within the department that have issue with that, say, we complied with the federal guideline, period. End of,
Yeah.
end of discussion.
So we need an amount for the part-time.
Well, why, I'm back to specify hours, so there's gonna be difference between part-time and full-time, and
That's
max
the
it,
only-
and max it out at that amount. So, you know, the full-timers are gonna get this, and any part-timer is gonna be based on the amount of hours they worked up to that amount.
But then you're gonna make it,
No,
you're gonna
you
make,
can't.
somebody's gotta sit and figure all that out.
No, and the mayor has said the distinction is whether or not you have a full-time employee or a part-time employee. That's the only difference in what you pay out.
Yeah, you can't scale it out on this
It's not based
thing.
on hours
Well,
worked.
that's why I'm back to what he was saying about the person in the fire department that was just hired on. If you do it by hours worked,
But
then
that's
that will
not
be
the
taken into
federal- We don't have
they didn't give
that.
us
Right,
that.
and we would have to try to do that, yeah.
Yeah, no,
I think it should be, if you want to do 2,500 full-time employee, and then someone else pick the part-time.
I would say 1750 for.
I like flat numbers, 1,500 that Jeff said.
1,500,
I'm all about it.
yeah.
And truthfully, I don't know how we do it.
I
But like
think-
you said, the sergeant, the way he's been busting his butt. You know, some of the other employees in this city,
Yeah.
they're putting 60, 80 hours in a month. You know, they're in
Well,
a week.
Cal has completely
I
reconfigured
wouldn't-
an entire department
I
just
wouldn't
single-handedly. I mean,
Be
he's,
opposed to giving them more. But how we'd figure that out, I don't know.
well,
I
like Russ said,
don't
we've only
think
got
that's
2
something we need to
delineations.
be
I don't think we
getting
can break out of that.
into. I think it should be 2,500 for full-time and 1,500 for part-time.
You want to pay all part-time people?
I think we should, yeah.
Well, I couldn't support that because I know that ones that haven't done diddly squat, and you're wanting to pay them.
Well, let me ask you this, so where do we put forth the department head? Are they gonna fill something out that says, this is why this employee did not get federal funds? I just don't want us to get into something to where,
Well, the way
I mean,
Russ
'cause
said
this
it,
is
we
not
got-
a-
we can just do
this is not
full-time employees.
a bonus for your work, this is,
You can do both, as I said, you can do both, or you can do just
Full-time employees.
and not do part-time.
so we don't have any part-time employees that deserve a bonus? I mean,
We
that,
do,
I'm
we do
asking.
apparently in one department.
We got
So then what do you do? Do you
We
do
got
one
one
department?
person.
That
okay?
says one person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got one person in one department.
Huh.
That's the problem.
I'll probably be odd
How
man
many
out
other
on this,
part-time people
so.
do we have? We got them in the fire department, part-time?
No one's part-time in the professional guys. They're-
So that the only part-time person we have is the one in the police department.
Well, wait a
So
minute,
why
well,
not
then-
full-time?
well, then what did you say? We have
Yeah, I thought
all
we
these
had-
other part-time people. Where are they?
We got more than one in the police department, but we've only got one who's justified in receiving
Oh, okay.
bonus.
Well, I think my bigger question now is if we've got a whole police force of part-time people that aren't doing anything, why do we have them? Why aren't we doing something about that?
Because they are so hard.
They are so strapped.
Well-
And we
And
can't.
Okay,
They're
so
short two
we've
part-timers
lost
right
3 officers.
Oh, I
neighboring
understand.
departments.
I
So
completely understand.
Just finding somebody that has the training.
Some of them show
Well,
up.
I have my
Full or
own opinions
part-time.
about that, so.
The
No,
part-time
I understand.
guys, you want to strap on a bulletproof vest and work part-time for $11 an hour? That's what they pay for part-time in the police department.
Oh, I completely get it, trust me.
Seriously, I was floored by that. We got guys on the fire department, they're running and burning buildings for $11.15 an hour.
And that's the budget challenge that we're, having to face, that we're in the middle of. We got our sleeves rolled up to our armpits on this one.
That's why we're losing people too.
So Russ, is your
We can't compete with
recommendation
Jonesboro and Batesville this
for us to
point.
pay
Since
full-time
It's a 3-day on,
on-
4-day off job.
That's up to you guys.
It's only
That'd be the easiest thing.
And that's. you
But I
don't
thought we
stop
just
local.
discussed, didn't we say we had at least one part-time that really does deserve it? So how do you justify that? Yeah, how do you?
I think you get into a problem. I think your problem comes into play when you're sitting back there and giving all the part-timers in the police department the same bonus when you know I don't know. How many
Well-
more are we talking about in the police department? How many part-time?
We've
So
got
our one
4
time-
guys right now who are considered part-time.
Pardon?
At the fire
4.
department?
No, in the police department. The fire department, we're all full-time.
Okay,
These-
well,
Okay, so
Two
we're
of them's
talking
gone.
about 4.
I think there's only 2 part-timers.
Okay, is that
And then
all
you
we
got
got?
2 auxiliary.
I know Brian is, I mean, he's
So let me-
working day and night.
We're, the
let me
police
ask you a
department is
question
short 2
though.
deputies.
We've got
and 2
one
officers.
part-time person that is busting their rear, and we're gonna go just full-time. So we're spitting in the face of our one part-time person that's busting their rear?
Well,
If we're
because
only
we've
talking
got
about one
like
other
4
part-time
other
person,
people
then I think we
that are
just bite
doing
the
nothing.
bullet and do full
Is there
and
another way
part-time.
to
I think we go back to
lines
Pam's
and find out
proposal.
the funds?
Russ isn't gonna support it.
No,
I mean, I think
there's
he-
no way on
he
that,
probably got
because the
votes for
budget
it.
is non-existent for that, but we
Unless
could leave it,
Up to the,
you could leave it up to the department head.
No, we can't. No, the federal guidelines state that we either do it one way or we do it another. I mean, we either do only full-time people and not part-time,
Okay,
or we do
Do
full-time and all part-time.
A little bit of the fine print. To be eligible to receive the bonus, employees must have been on the payroll for over a 1-year time period.
Oh,
So what does that do?
So that's
to your
Lane
full
is
and
knocked
part-time?
out.
How many people does that exclude?
Oh dear.
that would be Lane, the fire department, Miles on the, have we already lost Miles on the police department? Basically, all the new kids on the police department, 3, unless we're down to those 2.
But I'll double check on that with the
That
Okay.
takes your treasurer out too.
municipal league attorney. To see if that's,
Well, and I don't know about the
That's
street department, because we.
we're not going, this is not going to be on, this will not be on the agenda. His motion to do it, but this resolution will be on the agenda for the
Okay.
meeting Thursday night.
Yeah, because we're gonna have to go check the fine print on the grant, on the,
Yeah, we can't do this wrong. I mean, we'll be in a
No.
lot of trouble. It has to be done by the board.
well, the motion was to have the
We've got
city
a month
prepare
to
the
get this.
paperwork
Okay,
to give full and part-time.
I think you've got the support of the council for that,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
we can argue the fine print later.
I definitely don't want to see anyone that's earned their way get left
I would
out.
love to see them to have it by Christmas.
I would too, if we can do that.
are we ready to go on to number 4? What is this storage building?
That's, I think that's for increasing the size of the storage building, I believe.
Oh,
What's
a
the
homeowner storage
location right
building.
now?
A homeowner
What's the
storage
limitation?
building. Okay, I was thinking we were gonna go into the storage business.
Off the top of my head, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I just noticed.
25, was it Chuck, you know?
It's, right now it's 12 by 20. Maybe they want to go 12 by 24. I don't know. Surely they don't want to go smaller.
No.
Can we take that item and wait till next year on it?
Increase the size.
Yeah.
Why would you wanna wait until
They already
next year?
changed the materials.
There's,
Or just
I don't know why it even popped up.
the size of it.
What made it something, what's happening that
Well, if
makes,
Charles is bringing it up, that means that he's talking to a homeowner that wants to make this happen. But why it couldn't happen in a variance, I don't know.
yeah.
But it also
We'll have
might,
to question him on this.
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I was at the meeting when this came up because there was a variance, but also in looking at the size of the garage, which is the 12 by 20, how many cars today fit in that 12 by 20?
Yeah.
Let alone 2 cars, because the cars have got bigger, the trucks have got bigger. That's why they were looking at changing this, not to exceed 1,200 square feet.
That's what
And-
they want.
But that's what they were, that's why it came into pass, is because the size of garage you have nowadays, what we have zoned for, cars don't fit, trucks don't fit.
No, this
Square
is
feet
not,
what we got right now.
this isn't on the same lot they have, this is on an empty lot
So
next to
this is
them.
not, this is not a storage building, this is potentially a garage, shop, whatever.
I
Yeah,
think it's that.
On a single resident lot where a resident is located, one portable building or shed not exceeding 12 feet by 20 feet in dimension, not exceeding 13 feet in height. That's
Garages are different.
the paper that you're getting, that they included in this, that you get in here tomorrow.
I think on this one.
And then they also have one on adjacent, a lot adjacent to your residential lot. So if you have an extra one, an extra lot.
Yeah,
Extra storage building.
Right.
Or you could build a garage, and the garages are, I want to say 1,200 square feet. But that's a garage, that's not a storage building.
What's the difference?
Nothing at my house.
Nothing in my house
Yeah,
either.
not in mine either, good grief.
Well, I'd rather see it be proportional to the lot. I mean, if we're gonna let a person build a house on that lot, let them not exceed the size of a house on that lot.
we've got some of those.
I mean, as a storage building, I mean,
I think-
if you have the lot and you wanna invest money into having a shop, we got a gentleman down, Huron, near, I think he's on Huron.
Huron.
The car collector.
Yeah.
You know, he made a bunch of little garages just kind of spread out. But I mean, if somebody, oh yeah, beautiful collection of cars, you should see him, he's usually up here at the dinette.
Yeah.
Just about every morning with one of them. But I would rather see it proportional to what a house can be put on that property. But I don't want it to turn into turning a garage into another bedroom type of thing, if that makes sense. I don't want to see a garage, I don't want to see a garage turn into a bed and breakfast. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Done all the time.
I know back when I was on P&Z, a lot of it had to do with people wanting 30 by 40 metal buildings.
Well, do we currently allow plumbing in storage units?
It's got to be a variance.
You know, so that's where your
Yeah,
rental
and
would
what
come in.
you end up with when you have plumbing, is generally somebody is sitting there doing work.
Yeah.
And they would like to have like a half bath.
I was
Well,
going to address his
you know,
concern that.
want
they
to
would
wash the
turn this into a
hands,
bed and breakfast.
want to wash the hands and stuff, but maybe a toilet, sink, but I wouldn't want to see, turn into, because it happened on, East Lake Shore. Guy said I was just putting in a shed there and it turns into a mother-in-law house.
Yeah, yeah.
On the channel, up above the channel, that new house that was built,
Yeah,
he wanted to have a 30 by 40 shed. And they told him it couldn't be metal, so.
why couldn't it be metal? Because there's a whole
Back
bunch
then
of
it
them.
couldn't be,
Oh,
not
back
now.
then, okay.
And he wanted a bathroom put in it, and they wouldn't allow him, they gave him a variance for a bathroom, but it could only be done, they could only stub it in.
Yeah,
And it couldn't be converted into a full bathroom until after the home was built, because it was all on the same property. So what he did is he had this shed, 30 by 40 shed built, and he had all the siding put on vertically. And when I went to look at it, I thought, oh man, that guy went and put a metal shed up. And he's told he couldn't. And I had to go all the way up to it, it's like wood grain looking and everything. He put vinyl vertically,
up and down,
so it would almost look like a metal.
yeah.
He just wanted to prove a point.
Well,
He had that money.
But if you go look at that guy's property, it's a
pristine.
really nice
Yeah, it
property,
is
and it was a
nice.
smart thing to give him the variances we did, because he invested a lot of money.
But if it hails again like it did last time, I wouldn't mind having metal on the outside of my house.
Now you can put metal storage.
On my house, not on the storage building.
The garage thing is a larger garage is a necessity, like she's talking about the size of the vehicles. One of our former employees bought a brand new Dodge pickup. When he got it home, it wouldn't fit in the garage.
Nope.
God,
No.
yeah.
Well, he had a height
Where
problem,
mine
didn't
is.
he?
I have this
Yeah.
much clearance.
It was a height problem.
It wasn't a matter of this kind of
Right
clearance,
across
this
the
kind of
line.
clearance.
We have to pull in and I have to
Oh, is
go
it
all the way to the
gone
left of my
sideways? That's
garage. She
ridiculous.
has to go all the way to, it's bad.
So let me ask a question. Okay, so nowadays, you know, the whole he said, he shed, there you go, she shed
Yeah.
are so popular. Do we allow for that in the village?
You can
with
have
our
a
current-
shed on your property if you have a garage built on your property, yes. But
Right, but can you plumb it and,
to the best of my knowledge, no.
Not without a variance.
see, I'd like to see things like that be more lax
I
because,
think you really ought to sit down
Because of the
and look
technical
at
nature of the variance,
Yeah.
what is
It
the
has to
property owner wanting to do with the
strictly
property.
apply to
right.
the property.
And try to partner
If the
with
property
them
poses a problem where you need a
to bring
variance to
forward
make
property.
something
Go
happen,
look at
instead of going on
on
this huge slope.
Yosemite,
Yeah.
you move it over
going around the
10
cove
feet,
where I live.
Yeah,
There's a landscape company from Jonesboro.
That's typically the
If you
nature
saw
of the
the
variance.
before
I think the only other thing
those
that might
two
be
lots
financial or
and see what they're
physical
doing now,
Well,
hardship.
amazing. Nothing short of amazing. And that is because somebody had a phenomenal amount of creativity to do something where they took all of the rock that they took out of two foundations. His original plan was to build a main primary house and next to it put a B&B. He bought two lots. So technically, he's right. But they took that rock and the second lot, it had a drainage culvert coming straight into it. And during heavy rainstorms, I mean, I'm sitting there going, it's going to blow the backside of whatever he builds out. But he took all this rock and put basically, I don't know what you call it,
dry creek bed.
riprap, yeah,
Yeah.
basically a dry creek bed, and he angled it over to the edge of the property, and then built his two foundations, and then he took the rock that was smaller and everything, put around those foundations, but then he took the large rock and built up the side of that dry creek bed that he established, and built it up so that now, I mean, Noah could be rowing
Oh, wow.
in Hardy and he wouldn't have a problem. But you sit there and you look at somebody that has creativity like that. To your point, I think it's incumbent upon us to really sit down and listen to what somebody wants to do with the property and help them invest a substantial amount of money. And it lifts, I guarantee you, he's going to cause my property appraisal to go up.
well, my point is, you know, times have changed. I mean, they just have. And I do feel like, especially kind of on this subject, we're behind the times.
Oh, we are.
I mean,
Without a doubt.
I've got a friend who made she doesn't live in Cherokee, and she made one of those she sheds. And I mean, she didn't invest a ton of money. She didn't have to, but it's just gorgeous. And the things that she gets to go out there and do and spend her time and take her son out there with her, and, you know, I
If we're
mean,
gonna grow this city, we're gonna have to change some of it. Because how many of your friends that you know that don't live in Cherokee Village would say, I wouldn't live there because there's too many restrictions?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to start seeing them based on, instead of just single lot. If a person's buying multiple lots, and let's view it as one big lot instead of a bunch of little ones. You know, if they're gonna do something, yeah, if you have 3 lots or 4 lots in a group, let's work with them instead of, you know, kick them to the curb.
Well, I think we do. The issue you have there is SID. They're not going to relinquish those 3 lots. You're going to have to pay.
Yeah, but even if you
Don't have to worry about that anymore.
Even if you look at multiple lots, when you compare, as long as you're not on the lake or the golf course,
Yeah,
and you're
I mean,
talking about multiple lots,
yeah, it's
we're still
nothing.
very competitive with other communities in terms of our overall property tax
Yeah.
assessment, because the appraisals on those other lots. Now, where we're out of whack is how we literally discriminate for those on the lake and those that are on the golf course, because it's an amenity fee. And I have to go get in my vehicle and I have to drive to 1 or 2 golf courses, regardless of whether I live on the golf course or live on the lake or off the lake. And I have to do the same thing of getting my boat out of storage. So what is amazing to me, and maybe this is the wrong venue and I apologize, but Mr. Hutchinson, their attorney, argued in Holiday Island that they were discriminating based on those fees, based on where you lived. And then you take the same attorney and throw him into the lawsuit here, and we ended up with exactly that.
Exactly
It discriminates based on, where you live. And I already pay a disproportionate amount because of the fact I am on the lake and I have higher property value. Therefore, I pay higher property taxes, the majority of which goes to the school anyway. But I shouldn't have to pay a disproportionately higher SID fee because I have no greater access to that. I live on one of 7 lakes. But if I want to go put my boat in on another lake, I got to go hook it up to my truck and go haul it over there like anybody else.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know. And we've had so many, to Jeff's point, we've had so many other issues that we've had to address. I don't have time to go address that issue. And that's where I'm hoping we're going to be able to go and start refocusing on some things.
Yeah.
We have to look at repurposing some of the subdivisions within our community and either flipping them to equestrian or hunting camps or whatever, but to be able to attract people into this community, we've got to repurpose some of the land and redefine what usage of that land is all about.
And to your point, and why I said to not let the chicken motion die, table it. It's like somebody buys 10 acres out here and they want to have chickens on it and it's not around everybody. Who says they can't? We let them have cattle, right?
Now,
They're
that
special
argument
use.
falls on the wrong, that is not fair. That's not apples to apples because that property was previously commercial. It was not residential. So this argument of cattle versus chicken, it's a completely different argument because that was commercial already. It was not residential and converting that over to farm animals. So those people that are arguing that
And
point,
the other thing that could have happened is he could have annexed himself into Ash Flat and taken himself right out of Cherokee.
I was kind of using that as a point. If they want to build a subdivision and leave that in the bill of assurance where they can have chickens.
and it's back to your original point of taking an entire subdivision, getting the majority of the owners to agree to a repurposing, whether it's chickens or whether it's
Condos, multi-family
equestrians or
dwellings.
whatever.
I think we can all pretty much agree that every single ordinance that we have for Cherokee Village does not fit every single neighborhood of Cherokee Village. It doesn't. We've thrown up, everything's blanketed, but you can go from one part of Cherokee and go to another, and it's like you're in a whole different town.
That's what I was saying. If they come to us with a bill of assurance that's either been changed or for a new subdivision and they want chickens,
But we're back to, the city's got nothing to do with it, and we can zone any
City
part of the city.
ordinance.
We can zone any part of the city any way we want, no matter what the bill of assurances say.
Right.
And then it's up to a person to take you to court. If they got the money to do it, God bless them.
So what were we saying about number 4 here?
I would like to.
I think we need to wait until Charlie's here to
chicken
ask
was,
what.
like he was saying,
And I'm with you. I think
different
this
parts of the
is-
village
this is
might
going
want
on
different
now.
things. Whether
We're
it
gonna
be
beat those
an
poor
equestrian-
chickens to death.
Are they gonna be
We'll
allowed
have
to
chicken
have
and dumplings by the time we're done with this.
I think it is, we're past time of taking, I agree with exactly what you said. It is past time to start looking at some of these.
Mayor,
And do
I gotta get
something.
something else fixed here. Can we move this meeting to the Friday before today?
The Friday before council.
Yes.
Is there any
How about moving
possibility?
it to a Tuesday before?
Well, the problem is, me scheduling, I either have quorum court, tonight I missed SID, those 2 days, there's people that are jumping on those days. Friday, nobody has any meetings on Friday. Thursday, nobody has no meetings on Thursday either. Wednesday's church night, so you can't really do church night.
Is
And
there
then-
any problem with us? I mean, this is a this is one of the longest planning meetings we've had.
Yeah.
So is there any problem with shifting this because of the fact that we have a city employee sitting right over here? And sometimes,
Oh, did they?
I need to change the readings to 4 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Problem solved.
okay,
Just
there
a
you
long
go.
day on Monday.
Well, then I got Quorum Court that meets on this day several times a month. You know,
What's on Tuesday?
Tuesday, it's either gonna be, Highland, depending on what week it is
Do
of
you
the month.
have to be at every single meeting in the county? I'm just asking as a general
I'm at 4, you know, do you have to go to work every day? It's my thing I've been doing for almost 20 years
No,
now.
and I understand.
Yeah, so
but-
it's-
but Peter, you also have an elected position.
Correct.
And so, you know, at some point, I have to make accommodations in my business, to your point.
Right.
And I have to schedule around this. I have to schedule around Thursday night. So there's times when my clients would prefer, that are working
Well,
clients.
I'm just
would
asking.
prefer in the evening. And so my question is, you go and tape, you go and record or whatever, city meetings, county meetings, SID meetings, at some point, you have to make a choice. The rest of us have to make a choice in how we allocate our time. And, you know, there's got to be enough time for the city clerk to submit and be in compliance with what she needs to do, because it has to be enough time to get on the website for the agenda.
She's supposed to have the stuff on the agenda Friday, correct? So that means it'd be done on Friday, and we'd be seeing it for the first time. So, yeah, it works.
No,
It's
this is
not
Monday,
changing.
and our meeting is Thursday, 3 days away.
Okay, but
If it is.
But you
if
get
it
that
is
stuff to
posted
Carmen.
on Friday,
you get that stuff to Carmen on Friday, so it goes on before the weekend.
if it is posted on Friday,
Yeah,
and you want to have a meeting on Friday,
right.
you're not going to have any chance to review anything.
But we'll be here doing it.
Isn't the Quorum Court meet second Monday of every month, this is the third Monday of the month?
They meet the 3rd, but depending on what month it is.
If you want to do that, do it
No,
next year.
no. Well, I gotta ask sometime, so I'm asking now. So anyway,
Can I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting?
second,
Motion's been made, I hear a second.
yep.
You got
Before you
it.
guys all take off, look at the back of your agenda, we've changed it a little bit. We're going to start putting announcements on there so people can
Cool.
see meetings and stuff when you're running. So if there's something that needs to be on there, let me know. And we'll, let Misty know and we'll get it on the calendar.
Thank you, that's awesome.